From Pocketnow.com, this is Pocketnow Weekly.
Hello, and welcome to episode 014 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week podcast from Pocketnow.com, where we discuss what's hot and what's cool in the world of mobile technology. Smartphones, tablets, phablets, everything in between. I'm your host, Michael Fisher, senior editor at Pocketnow. I'm joined, as usual, by our editor-in-chief, Brandon Miniman. Good morning to you, sir.
Hello.
And Anton D. Nadia is off today. We are joined by, once again, special guest, recurring guest extraordinaire, Joe Levi, the Android guy. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I am very excited to get started here. Right up front, guys, we do want to tell you, even though we might lose a couple of you, we're not going to be able to get to listener mail today. We're on a tight schedule this morning because we're all very, very, very busy guys. So we're going to jump right into the news. We are going to get to listener mail next week. I do apologize for that. And before we jump right into the news, I want to give Brandon Miniman his customary corner, shorter though it may be. Brandon?
Can it be a rounded corner, or does it have to be like a...
Yeah, it can be a narrow radius, rounded corner. You can do whatever you like, sir.
As long as it's not a squircle, we're fine.
No rhombuses in here.
That was my favorite flavor. Well, last week we were talking about bridging analog and digital in terms of handwriting recognition with the Note 2. And Michael, I know you want to talk a little bit about this in a minute, but maybe this can kick it off. We were talking about two ways to bridge analog and digital, to have that sort of handwriting experience in a digital format. Mm-hmm. One of the ways we talked about, Tony came up with a really cool idea where the device would learn your handwriting and thus drastically improve its ability to convert it to digital, because right now it's not that good. And the other thing that we came up with was have a screen texture change so that it felt more like high friction paper, because right now sliding a stylus across the screen of a Galaxy Note 2 is like ice skating, and it just doesn't feel that good. But then there's a third thing that I thought about, and I'm curious to what you guys think about this. One of the things that you kind of can't replicate on a mobile device is the fact that when you write something down, whether it's on a whiteboard or a piece of paper, it's always there, meaning you don't have to turn a screen on. And it's really frustrating because if you're using your Note 2 for a to-do list, you have to keep turning your screen on. You're not going to leave it on all the time, or else your battery will be dead in like 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about this for years, these hybrid screens that have the ability to do LCD and e-ink. But I would that would be awesome if you could just flip a switch on the back of the phone or something, and there's your to-do list that you've written out in e-ink, so that you don't have to keep turning on and off your phone.
That is fascinating, and I have not seen the hybrid e-ink and LCD display. I hate that LCD display ATM machine, but I have not seen those hybrid displays. But it brought to mind like maybe something a Chinese manufacturer might do, like one of the smaller guys, like to kind of rip off this interesting idea where they can't do one of those hybrid displays, so they do like an LCD on the front, and then you flip the phone over, and on the back is an e-ink. It's a touch-sensitive e-ink panel. Joe, doesn't this like connect with what you wanted to talk? Joe Levi was incensed, ladies and gentlemen, last week when we discussed handwriting recognition without him. So, Joe, what do you feel about this?
Well, let me throw in a couple thoughts on what Brandon was saying.
Please, that's what I mean.
First off, yeah, if I'm taking notes on a device, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a smartphone, and I've got to hit the power button and then unlock it and then navigate to my app, and what was I doing? I've forgotten now. So that to-do list doesn't do me any good, right. Which might explain why I've got my to-do list on a blue sticky pad sitting on my desk.
Primitive.
Yeah, so I think we've got a while to go there. The whole e-ink concept with a hybrid, I'd like to see that. I think we have people complaining about pen tile displays, and now we're going to overlay something with an e-ink that has to be completely transparent and not hurt our existing display, the color saturation, the resolution. I think it's very, very ambitious, to say the least. Not to say I wouldn't want something like that, but wow, that'd be fabulous. But the thought that came to my mind is it may not be the pure hybrid that Brandon was talking about, but we've got these awesome new pens now, these styli. Why not make the devices go into a sleep, which we know our device isn't off when it's sleeping, and when the pen gets close to the screen, have it automatically open up and take you to your preferred ink recognizing app. So it's not always on, but next best thing.
So you're basically taking what is true right now, which is you remove the stylus from the dock, and usually the device knows it, and just taking it one extra step. You're making the S Pen or the stylus even more intelligent.
Or the device, rather. So
right.
You don't necessarily have to bring up an app list like you do with the stylus dock, but if the device is off and you approach it with the pen, you know, it doesn't take a computer scientist to realize you're probably going to want to do something with the pen on your tablet or on your phablet.
Or you could go a few steps back and put an accelerometer in the stylus, so that as soon as you pick it up, if it's not inserted into the device.
Oh.
Yeah.
If those packages become small enough, that would be amazingly cool. I've got a pen sitting around here. I just did a little C Pen video yesterday and compared it to the S Pen, and I also have this other Samsung Bluetooth pen sitting around, which is huge. And I think it has a phone receiver in it. You can use it as that big old thing. It was and it got me thinking about how many sensors we could pack in and how many features we could pack into a stylus. But this one that I'm talking about is just so, well, it's thick and it's heavy and it's not very fun to carry around, and you could never put it in a device. So I think until we get to a point where we can miniaturize more of this stuff, we're kind of in the midst of a pipe dream here.
Well, when we get to that point, how about using that accelerometer, that proximity sensor, to not only unlock the device without touching the device, or rather turn it on, but also unlock it? So you could literally scribble a gesture in the air or flip the pen in a certain way to unlock your device, so you can bypass everything all in one.
That would be awesome. You could also have, your friend have a similar stylus if you're both carrying the same phone, and you could have virtual lightsaber battles if you got a stylus with an accelerometer and a gyro in there. That would be great.
I never have a problem with the lock screen because on Android I always turn it off thanks to Ice Cream Sandwich and above you can do that. Joe, why, unless you're using pin unlock or some other security measure, why do you have a lock screen?
I have face unlock because I have a day job where people love to go in and mess with your device.
Yes.
And I have kids who love to go in and mess with your device. So literally every single Android we have in the entire house has some form of pin or face unlock to keep people from messing with it.
Do you really do face unlock on a daily basis? Like, I tried to do that for the first 2 days. I had the Galaxy Nexus, and I was like, okay, I'm tired of holding my phone up so it can see my face at the right angle, and
Yeah, the first round of face unlock was an interesting concept. It was fun. It was novel. It lasted a day, and then I went back to my pattern unlock. When they improved it, and I forget when it was. It's early in the morning here, so that you could go in and improve face unlock by taking multiple screen captures, if you will, of your face. And they also added the liveliness check, which I still haven't gotten to work a single time. But at that point, it became useful, and it became something that I have on my Nexus 7. I have on my Galaxy Nexus.
Okay.
It works great for me.
Maybe I'll have to go back and give that another go. I haven't tried it since I first snapped up the Galaxy Nexus. And
is that faster though than pin unlock or pattern unlock?
Can't be.
It can be.
What?
It can be.
No way. Really?
You just pick it up and you look at your device, and by the time you're looking at your device, it's already unlocked and you're good to go. If it doesn't recognize you right away, pattern unlock is significantly faster.
Joe,
but the more you do the improvements, the faster it gets.
I know you're a fellow guy who has an ample allotment of hair. And like when you wake up in the morning and that's in a different shape, when that's all like poofed up and whatever, like, did you ever have any trouble with your phone recognizing you? Because I imagine, I have not tried to fool my phone in that regard, but my hair gets pretty wild when I wake up.
No, I've never had the problem with hair. However, when I wake up in the morning, my face is not pretty. Those who've seen my video know that my face isn't pretty to begin with, but I look different when I wake up, so it has a hard time recognizing me until I added an extra, hey, I just woke up face to my my screen or my face recognition.
Face recognition, right?
Yeah, so I added that. Now it's not a problem.
I just thought of a fantastic joke to play on someone who uses and relies on face unlock. I know there's a secondary way to unlock your device, but let's say you have a friend who has a ton of hair, and while they were sleeping, you'd shave their head, and when they wake up, they cannot unlock their phone.
Yes. That's true.
Okay, big tangent here. Everybody remembers the X-Files, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you had the funky guys, the lone gunmen that Mulder liked visiting every once in a while.
Hated them, yeah.
Well, remember the writer's strike, and we lost X-Files for forever?
Yeah.
They came out with a spin-off series called The Lone Gunman, and one of the very last episodes of that series was them defeating a facial recognition system by painting their faces blue and putting like little orange sticky notes on their, or little orange stickers, the round ones, over their faces.
Like motion capture stickers, yeah.
Yeah, because you're just matching the points. So if you blank out the face with, all blue, like a blue screen, and then put those dots on, there you go. Now you can defeat the face recognition.
I actually want to do. I didn't know where you were going when you started talking about the Lone Gunman. I got into it like a really irritated place. Not with you, Joe. Just really don't like the Lone Gunman. But no. But that would be an amazing little video to whip up. Trying to fool Google's facial recognition. I'm sure somebody's already done it, but if we get into a slow week in the next couple weeks, I might like to try that.
Yeah, look at all the news coming down the pike that we're going to talk about.
There's not going to be a slow week for months.
So do we want to segue into a little bit?
I do want to jump into news. But before I do, just a real quick announcement, a re-announcement, really. We are, listeners, in week 2 of our Nexus 7 giveaway, meaning we still have 2 Nexus 7 devices left to give away with our friends at Amzer helping us out with that. This is a combined giveaway with them. Read the entry. Read the post. It is called Nexus 7 Giveaway Week 2. Let it begin. And all the rules are there. It's not hard. Don't let anybody tell you it is hard. And we are just having a ball giving away these things for free. So please enter and have fun with that. And speaking of not that, Joe. Joe, before we jump into the news here, what did we have right before we wanted to leap into Android? I know you wanted to talk a little more about.
Yeah, so I was incensed. Tony and you guys talked about handwriting recognition without me.
So annoying.
Which you can never, ever do again.
Very insensitive, so we do apologize.
Well, the thing that got me into it was Tony brought up something that I had forgotten about, and that's back in the Windows CE days, we had, and probably even a little before that, we had apps, we called them programs back then, that you could install and literally write down your own letters on your device's screen and create your own TrueType font. In the days prior to that, people were perfecting that technology by, for a fee, they would send you a sheet of paper that you could then do the same thing with an actual real pen and fill in the blanks, capital A, lowercase a, capital B, lowercase b, all the way through the alphabet. You send that off to them, and in return, you get back a disk with a TrueType font of your handwriting. And I never could quite understand how that would be useful because my handwriting is terrible. That's why I have a computer. But it was cool. You could type on your keyboard and turn it into handwritten text and make those letters that you were sending people look personal because, look, I actually wrote it for you.
Did it work well?
You didn't. It looked kind of funky because you don't just have one A or one B that you write. It depends on what comes before it and after it, so it varies quite a bit. But the point, and this is what got me so enraged. See, I went from incensed to enraged.
Wow. Careful. I know you've got hollow points over there, Joe.
Did you notice I misspelled that? HOLO, because Android has the hollow thing. Anyway. So Tony was going at this saying, we can train it and have it learn our handwriting so that when we write, it's writing and recognizing and converting into our font just right there. At least that was the concept that I thought he was trying to get across, which is completely the opposite of what we want to be doing. So taking a step back to Newton, and I was a really, really big Newton guy in the day. I owned 3 of them.
Fake Newtons?
Isaac Newton's.
Oh.
This is back in the day of Gil Amelio at Apple, when Apple was Apple, and then they spun off Newton to be their own company. Newton had it down. They had shape recognition in notes. You could write a triangle, it would convert it into a triangle, a square, a line, a circle, a street intersection. It would do all of that for you. Samsung is trying to do that, and they have a long way to go before they catch up with Newton, which is sad because Newton was so long ago.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Gestures. Newton had real-world gestures. If you didn't like something, you scribbled it out, and poof, there was a cloud animation and a sound, and it was gone. It was very simple, it was very intuitive, and it was just like you do it on paper. You just scrub it out, and it's deleted. Newton also had training exercises. You had not really games, but you could go through and write sentences, and it would start to learn your handwriting recognition, which was ultimately its downfall. You had to do that with the early message pads so that it could recognize your text and convert on the fly as you were writing. The later versions, the MessagePad 2000 and 2100, it was fast enough. The processor in that was fast enough that you didn't have to do that. And we're talking, 200 megahertz processors back then? But it was fast enough that you didn't have to do that. We shouldn't have a problem with it today. Come on. Quad-core 1.5s.
Yeah.
So segue over to Microsoft. I also had a tablet PC that I used all through college. The reason for that is I was taking mathematics, I was taking statistics, I was taking all of these things, economics, where I had to write equations and where I had to graph things and write charts and do all this stuff. And I couldn't do that on a laptop because typing that stuff in on a laptop is just painful. Writing it on a screen with a stylus is a lot nicer. And yes, I know it doesn't feel like ink on paper, but I had a digital copy that I could then email to myself or to my study partners or whatever, and I had it right there, and I didn't have to carry around a separate handwritten notebook. But something that Microsoft did, they released this phenomenal application called OneNote that hardly anybody knows about, hardly anybody uses. And it should have revolutionized computers the way we use them today, and I'm disappointed that it hasn't yet. But in OneNote, it's literally your digital binder. You have folders. Inside those folders, you have subfolders. You have sheets of paper that can go on forever and ever and ever.
This is on a laptop. This is on straight Windows. Is that correct?
Yeah, any Windows device, not Windows Phone, but any Windows device,
right.
You can do this. But the strength behind it, in addition to its organization, was the way it recognized your writing. You could literally write just a full-length letter or maybe even a novel on this screen, and it would leave your handwriting intact. And what it would do is go behind the scenes and recognize what it thought you wrote, and it might come up with 5 or 10 different things that it thought you were talking about, and index that behind your note. You wouldn't even see it, but you could search on it and find it.
So it's like predictive text, like way, way in advance, and in the handwriting arena. I mean, it sounds like the most useful predictive text I've heard of.
And it was behind the scenes, so your handwriting was still on the screen, but you could literally do a search on your computer for statistics or for Keynesian economics and find it. Because it would recognize, I don't know if he wrote Keynesian, it might have been Kenyan, it might have been Key Bank, but it would recognize what it thought and maybe put 5 or 10 things behind that word, behind the scenes, and have it right there.
Yeah, OneNote's amazing, and it's still used today. It's still being updated. It's multi-platform now, except it's not on Android. It's only on Windows and Windows Phone.
I knew I'd heard the brand name somewhere.
Yeah, it's really powerful software. It's funny because handwriting doesn't really have a place in Windows 8 like it probably did in previous versions where that was going to be the future, and then they were just like, forget this, touch input, finger input, there we go.
Right. That's actually what I was thinking. I was like, why haven't any of these advancements actually come to fruition and come to change our landscape? And it's because I think we had this big disruption in the market, right, of this capacitive touch sort of revolution, which which I'm not, I want to be clear, I'm not sad about. I'm really glad that happened. But it did, completely, like, ripped the rug out from under any kind of stylus development, any kind of handwriting development, because suddenly styluses were really, really uncool. And unless you're following the phablet space, unless you carry a Galaxy Note or a similar product, they still are, I would venture to say, pretty uncool. People don't want them still, I think, in a broad sense.
Yep.
Well, if you look at all of your accessories, everybody who has a tablet is going to, at some point in time, consider getting a keyboard so they can really do rapid text input on that device.
Sure.
When you get into typing on a screen, that's great for smartphones, but tablets where you want to actually get work done, an on-screen keyboard is still slow. Handwriting recognition, through whatever mechanism you want to use, has the potential to fix that. The tablet with a stylus has the potential to fix that. The challenges that we have are what we've talked about, plus how do you fill out forms with a stylus?
Oof.
If I'm creating a new person, and this is kind of another thing you mentioned in the last podcast, Michael. If I'm getting someone's contact information, I want to open up my contacts app, say I want a new contact, get my stylus out, and write the information into those fields. And right now I can't do that. Not even on a super awesome Galaxy Note 2. Right. I can't do that.
Yeah.
It's only in specific apps that I even have any stylus capability other than just finger replacement.
Right. Well, let me say this. I agree with you. I think that would be a fun feature to have for people like us. In less so for somebody like me, because I think we talked last podcast about how, like, when you're writing for more than a couple minutes now, your hand cramps up because we're not used to writing anymore. I mean, can you imagine how much more true that is going to be for people who, younger people, and how much truer it already is? Like, I feel like when you say that that stylus-based input, that writing input is going to somehow experience this resurgence because it's somehow more efficient. I don't know. I think that people are being raised on keyboards now, and I think as I think more about this in the middle of my sentence, I'm like, well, I think styluses are actually still going to be a niche thing. I don't think they're going to come back in a big way. The Galaxy Note 2 obviously is an anomaly here because that's a core differentiator for it, but I don't see the stylus input method coming back because I see writing by hand as a whole, no matter what you're using, dying out over the next 50 to 75 years. Maybe I'm a radical. Maybe I'm just too in love with the idea of the future. But
a dreamer.
Yeah. Well, they say I am a dreamer.
I'm still, just to wrap this whole thing up, I am still looking for the point in time where the devices that we're carrying around with us are as functional as the Newton was that I was carrying around back in 96, 97.
Yeah, I agree. I can't disagree with you.
Joe, go buy a Newton. They're on eBay.
All right, let's jump into to Android news. There was a good talk, Joe. I'm glad you got to compensate for our omission.
Anymore, so.
I'm glad you're not incensed, enraged, or thinking about those hollow points anymore.
Oh, I got all that out on the table.
Now I can't say hollow points without thinking of your Android misspelling, intentional misspelling. Before we jump into the actual Android news, as listeners, as you know, we've got a couple instances of the LG Optimus G here at the Pocketnow offices, thanks to our friends at LG. I am staring at the AT&T version right now, which I unboxed the other day. Brandon, I believe you have you received yours yet?
Should be coming shortly.
That is outstanding. And can I talk about the carrier that's on? It's probably no big secret.
Of course.
That's on Sprint. So it's I've just wanted, obviously you have to wait for the full review to hear my impressions on this, but I am just surprised at that LG has managed to keep me interested for this long, because it's been a couple days, and even right out the box, I was like, wow, this actually feels a little bit more premium than I thought. And then I'm thinking, well, the software's got to be a tripping point here, as it is on a lot of LG devices. And wait, it's not so far. So there's your little very, very vague and non-detailed sneak preview. This is very interesting. It's a very interesting device, and not in a bad way. So I'm looking forward to trading notes with you, Brandon. Go ahead, Joe.
we talked about LG in a previous episode that I happened to be a part of, and there was one of us who said something about LG.
Uh-oh.
Who was that said LG was really going to do something to knock it out of the park?
You know, I don't know, but it sounds like maybe that's something a guy from Utah might say.
It might be. Don't count them out yet. Something like that. Go back and listen to the back episodes of the podcast.
Like that. Something like that. The reason that this is relevant is not just because the Optimus G is around, but because the Nexus 4 is kind of almost basically official at this point. If you take like this massive mountain of leaks as official evidence of anything. But the LG Nexus 4 just got some hands-on time. We got some benchmarks out of it. I'm looking at a story that Stephen Shank posted on October 12th. So, you know, I don't know. I'm still not terribly pleased, to be honest, that the next Nexus is being built by LG. I was kind of excited about something that Motorola was going to bring to the table, which we'll talk about in a second. But how do you guys feel about the Nexus 4 in light of these new benchmarks, which don't look terribly all that impressive?
I was on LG's YouTube channel trying to get a taste and understanding for all of the features that the Optimus G has, and I started thinking, you know, this is really nice hardware. It looks like it's pretty nice hardware, and the S4 Pro is a beast. And, you know, it would be cool if this thing was running stock Android. And, well, that is pretty much the Nexus 4. So I am very, very excited to try the Nexus 4.
Yeah. I you know what I hope they retain, and it's something that is not related to the specs, but the notification light on this thing is actually built into the power standby button on the side. So it's very much like if you ever used any of Sprint's old Direct Connect hardware, when they were transitioning from Nextel, and the big push-to-talk button on the side was backlit in this brilliant blue LED backlight that let you know the button was there, let you know somebody was trying to talk to you. It reminds me of that. And it's just really, really cool. I like when OEMs combine buttons and lights because I'm pretty easy to impress.
But if the phone's if you're sitting at a table and the phone's facing away from you, you won't see the light. Whereas on like the Galaxy S3, as long as the phone is on its back, you'll always see the notification.
On the Galaxy S3, if the phone is in the room, you'll see the notification.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but no, that is
House.
true. But you know what? It doesn't. Ultimately it doesn't matter, Brandon. If the LG Optimus G is on a table, it will not be on a table for very long unless the table has been laser angled so that it is perfectly even. It'll just slide right off. This is the slipperiest phone I have ever encountered.
That bad? Or is it good? How does it feel in the hand?
I mean, it feels good in the hand, but if it's too dry outside, if it's too dry and cold, it'll slip out of your hands. If it's too hot outside and your hands are sweaty, it'll slip out of your hands. Like it's holding onto a piece of glass without the iPhone's without the iPhone 4's kind of thick metal band for support, and it's a little too wide. So yeah, it is beautiful to look at. I wouldn't want to carry it around without a case, and that's coming from a guy who hates cases. So, you know,
Case hater.
yeah. But anyway, I don't want to. I want to kind of just very, very briefly touch on this Nexus issue because we talked about the Nexus 4, and I think it was just last week's podcast where I was like, if Sony gets a Nexus phone out before Motorola does, I will eat my hat. And it looks like if it depends on if you believe this leaked image of this Sony Nexus device. It looks like that might happen. We kind of don't know really. I know I forgot to put this in the rundown, guys. I'm sorry.
The Nexus X.
Yeah, I don't really. I really hope that that is a fake. I know that I'm incensing a lot of Sony fans, but I really, really just. I don't know. We've talked in the past about how Sony has not really gotten a hold here, but we'll kind of have to see about that. I do want to jump right past it. I just wanted to touch on it that yes, I will have to extract my foot from my mouth if this turns out to be real.
So 2 points on that before we jump past it.
2 points. Look at this guy.
Look at me getting my foot in there. We have recently seen Google and Sony team up to release AOSP ROMs for a couple of the Xperia devices. Mm-hmm. So that essentially brings the Nexus experience to some of the older devices. So that could be a kind of a hint at where things are going. And second, just looking at that picture, I haven't seen any other devices. And if you guys can think of any that I'm missing here, that have those magic little gold dots, those 3 or 4 little gold dots on the side that aren't a Nexus device.
Oh, right.
Those two things paired together tell me a lot more that we're going to have a Sony Nexus device.
That's for landscape docks, right?
For what's that?
I'm sorry, those gold dots. They're connections for a landscape dock, right? They have a special acronym.
Pogo pins.
Pogo pins. That's right.
Yeah. So I've got the desktop dock and I've got the car dock, and both of them make use of them on my Galaxy Nexus, and they work very, very nicely. It's the next best thing to wireless charging.
Oh, you know, nothing's as good as wireless charging. No, Brandon, you think it's real?
Yeah, this thing looks totally unique. I've never seen hardware like this. I like how it has a bulge on the bottom. It looks like it has soft touch on the top and brushed metal on the bottom. And the front, we don't have a shot of it turned off, but it's just going to be like this badass looking, very squarish looking slab. And I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I think that's probably going to be my next Nexus.
Well, let's talk about. You know what? Maybe this is another opportunity for me to be surprised by a manufacturer that has never really impressed me. So I also shall look forward to it. But let's talk while we're talking about giant phones. I want to talk about what we've been calling the HTC Dix. The Droid Incredible X is what it might be called once it lands on Verizon. So HTC has taken the wraps off this thing and called it or a variant of it, and called it the Butterfly. The Butterfly J, which is just a hilarious name for a massive phone. I mean,
it's so strange.
It is. You think Butterfly, you think like LG is going to drop this 3.2-inch, low-end phone that's maybe colored carnation pink, but no, it's not. It's this massive thing for Japan. We don't know what the chip is. Most probably the S4 Pro, says Tony in the story here, with 2 gigs of RAM. 16 gigs storage, et cetera, and a full HD 1080p display with 440 pixels per inch.
This is just unbelievable.
This is. I mean, Brandon, have you flown to Japan and gotten one of these for yourself yet?
My ticket is purchased. I don't know where to get one though. This is actually kind of an easy thing to predict, because HTC needed to do something first, and no one's done a 1080p screen yet, and it's probably crazy to do a 1080p screen because the pixel density is so high most people won't know the difference unless the software is really taking advantage of it. I just wish HTC would realize that they need to start over with Sense. No one likes Sense. HTC is doing a relatively good job with hardware, the One X, the One X Plus.
Great
but
job.
then when you get into the operating system, it's like, come on, we don't like this.
Well, and they have been taking notes on that. They've been slimming it down. I remember, Sense 4 was a big step in that direction, and this kind of like stepping back and getting their hands out of it. And we get all the 3D stuff went away and stuff. Is this screen grab? It's not a screen grab. This press shot from HTC is showing. Am I right, guys, that this is showing a new version of Sense we haven't seen before, with these kind of like side anchored icons on the left there?
It's called Sense 4 Plus, and it kind of looks like the HTC Rime, doesn't it?
A little bit.
Is this what the Rime looked like?
The Rime had those sliders on the left.
Is that what they are? They're sliders? See, I never used the Rime on account of not, owning a purse and not wanting a tentacle to come out of my phone. So I don't know.
Tentacle.
Yeah, or whatever that thing was called. What did they call that thing?
The Charm.
The Charm.
Oh, the Charm.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, so 1080p. It sounds awesome. Wow, fabulous, until you start looking at how many pixels are on that screen. 720p is a lot of pixels, and you've got to have a lot of processing power behind it to paint all of those on the screen. Mm-hmm. Going all the way up to 1080p, pixel density aside, that's a whole lot of pixels that your GPU has to figure out and has to paint on the screen. Mm-hmm. That means if you get a 4 times faster GPU, it's not going to behave any quicker because you got that many more pixels that you got to babysit. And then you've also got the battery implications, because that's going to take a lot more power just to keep up with 720p. So I'm really, as cool as it is, I'm really worried that having that many pixels is going to either kill battery life or it's just going to be slower than what we've come to expect because there are just so many darn pixels.
And in exchange, I mean, we have to get something of value. We have to get something out of this 1080p display on a smartphone that is going to benefit more than people who just, for some reason, use their phones 2 inches from their eyes and will be able to tell the difference. Because I think the vast majority of people won't be able to tell the difference. And so why are we sacrificing that? Why are we, forcing this device to have that much processing power and have that much extra battery life, which it doesn't. It has like a 2,000 milliamp hour battery or a 2020 milliamp hour battery. I mean, come on.
It's a tough case to make because YouTube streams in 720p on your Android phone, the YouTube app. Movies that you download from Google Play, as far as I know, are not going to scale to 1080p. Games will absolutely not scale to 1080p for another couple of years until this higher resolution becomes a standard.
Right.
So there's going to be very little content to take advantage of the higher res.
Yeah, so is this just a stunt? Is this just HTC saying, yeah, we need to do something first, and here it is? Is this HTC like doing the LG approach, like first, but who cares?
Well, this is the problem between Android users and Apple users. Android users want specs. We look at the specs. What processor is it? How fast does it run? How many cores does it have? How much RAM? How big's the screen? How big's the battery? And then Apple users, it's taller. It's faster. It's got higher resolution screen. The EarPods now direct sound down the ear canal. Just very ambiguous, saying this is better, but we're not really telling you how or why it's better, because then you could compare it to something else, and pardon the pun, it's comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah.
So Android, especially as power users, which if you're at Pocketnow, I hope you're becoming an Android power user, we all want specs. We want to see what this thing is. We want to push the envelope, and HTC knows that. This is just an extra line on the box to get people to say, look, here's my phone. It's 1080p. Yours isn't even 720p. Ha ha, I win. And it's another way that HTC can say, we are, again, on top. We're the first to do this, and try and become relevant again.
You know what? I just don't think that ever works. It hasn't worked for LG in any of their spec, any of their de-measuring contests with the specs.
Optimus 2X and stuff.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like first to 3D, who cares? First to quad-core and LTE. Maybe some of us care. We don't know until the review comes out. I mean, this has a better chance. This Optimus G has a better chance of making me care about LG than most products from LG have in the past couple of years. But that's been a couple years of LG saying, "Hey, here we're first," and everyone else going like, "Oh, cool," and then a week later being like, "What was that?" Yeah, I don't remember what they. It wasn't impressive.
I don't think you can compare. I don't think you can compare that with this, because LG's execution of dual-core, quad-core, and 3D all were relatively poor. And unless this phone is slow and has poor battery life, as Joe is suggesting, it's going to matter because it's got the specs. And it's also, don't forget, people might consider this to be a little bit future-proof. Maybe they want a phone for a year and a half or 2 years, something that'll live up to the standards of future higher resolution content.
So
absolutely good
not
point.
In the sense of it being a phablet, because it's not. It's a 5-inch device or whatever. It's not a
phablet. I don't think
it's not a phablet, but not in the sense of that, but in the sense of powerhouse, future-proofing powerhouse. This is HTC's Galaxy Note 2, it looks like. I mean, like I say, not in the sense that it's a phablet, but it's like, hey, check out these ridiculous specs. And, of course, we haven't got our hands on it. We don't know how it runs. But, I mean, one of the big reasons I gave the Galaxy Note 2 a 9 out of 10, or we gave it, after much discussion, was that, like, it just does everything you ask it to, and it does it pretty well on account of its, really powerful engine. So if this device, this Butterfly /Dix / whatever you want to call it, can churn out that kind of performance and, offer something as a first, then yes, I think that they've got something really awesome on their hands. And I hope that that's true, because I happen to like HTC. So
yeah, I love HTC. This device, I think, is really going to show us what that S4 Pro chip can do, and I hope that I will be very, very pleasantly surprised with battery being fine, performance being great. I really, really want to have another HTC phone as my daily driver again. I miss them.
Yeah.
Hey, Michael. no, this will be an easy question. No role playing.
Thank God.
So you've been messing around with the S4 Pro and the Optimus G, and it's interesting. What people don't realize or don't really think about is that Qualcomm was kind of late to the quad-core game. The Tegra 3 was out like a year ago, and they waited and they perfected, and the benchmarks say that the S4 Pro is awesome. In comparison to the Exynos Quad, newer than the Tegra 3, would you be able to say that the S4 so far feels faster than the Exynos Quad on the Note 2, or is it too early to tell that?
God, it's so hard. I'm still right in the. I'm in the fuzz, right? I'm in this point where I'm like still surprised that I'm holding an LG device that's responding this well. So I can't judge it, adequately against the Samsung, the last Samsung device I handled, which with the Exynos Quad, which was the Galaxy Note 2. So I don't know. I would say right now, if you pressed me for an answer, I would say that they are on par. Although the repeatable lag instances I had with the Galaxy Note 2, though they were very few, I have not run into on the Optimus G. I've been pleasantly surprised at almost every turn with the software on the Optimus G. So,
Wow.
Yeah, it's really very impressive so far. So that's the best answer I can give you. Let's keep moving down the list here because we've got a couple more things to touch on before we jump into iOS. And just very, very briefly, while we're talking about kind of skins and software and things like that, Motorola has actually come out and talked to reporters. I love this headline. Motorola likes stock Android, blames carriers for customizations, which is awesome because we've been, Motorola's been one of the companies that kind of the press has loved to rip on for its skins. And those skins have really become a lot lighter to the point where you can it's almost tough to distinguish Motorola's Android builds from stock Android builds if you're not a real aficionado. So I like hearing from a company, though, that he says, I like stock Android, too. It's the carriers that want to, by the way, he declined to name any carriers specifically, but I think we kind of... Right. Excuse me. I think we all know what he's talking about here. He claims that Motorola tries to resist such demands, but what we end up with is ultimately a compromise between the two positions. It's just nice to see that as some manufacturers become more emboldened in their skin design, like Samsung is just never going to give up the TouchWiz torch because they bring a lot of usefulness to the product, I think. But while some companies go that way, other companies are like, yeah, and it might be because they're owned by Google, but who knows? But Motorola's just like, yeah, we get where you're coming from. The carriers want us to do this. And it's like, okay, well, I half believe you. I don't know. Do you guys have a brief thought on that?
It's refreshing to hear that they're thinking that Android is good enough to be unadulterated. Question for you guys: if you were running HTC and knowing that Android keeps getting better and better as a stock operating system, in fact 4.1.2 fixes that annoying issue where you need to take two fingers to the notifications and expand them that way. Now you do it with one finger. Would you move your investment in R&D and software out of software and put it all into hardware and focus exclusively on hardware and specs and high-quality hardware and just say, from now on, we're just shipping straight stock Android? Would you do that if you were HTC?
Well, then you're Windows Phone. Then you're using that approach. I think tactically, I don't think that's terribly wise. My gut instinct was to respond, yes, absolutely. But that's because I like stock Android, and I don't think hardware gets different enough. But then you look at a company like Samsung, who's not doing that at all, who's doing the exact opposite, who's saying, screw you guys, we're going to keep building this skin because look at all the cool stuff we can do when we skin Android. And look at how, soundly Samsung is beating the competition. So I don't think it's the winning strategy, Brandon, to do that. No, I think if I ran a hardware company, yes, I probably would say, we're not doing skins, we're doing awesome hardware. But, my company probably wouldn't do well.
I'd take a different approach to that. Say, instead of skins, instead of Sense UI being the interface, let's make Sense UI just be Sense and make it a theme. And you can, if you want to, you can switch that theme to something else. But will include our widgets, will include some of our apps, will include all of these other things. Oh, and by the way, let's also sell those for like $5 a pop in the Play Store. So people who don't have an HTC device, we're still going to make money off of those people who really, really want this widget or that widget or this app or that app. Let's keep doing the software development, but let's monetize it and let's leverage everything that Android can do and make it look our own rather than reinventing the wheel to make it look our own.
I love that. And they could probably even create a new company for just software, and it could be a new business for them.
I don't know if that is viable from a business perspective. It sounds awesome to me, but I will tell you just personally, if Motorola released their Circles widget for $5 to anybody, I know it's free. You can get it. But if they sold it, I would buy that ish. Straight up. I
know people who would buy it for $20.
Absolutely, because it's the coolest widget there is.
Yes.
It's an awesome widget. Anyway, we'll get into why that widget is awesome on a future 2-hour installation of Pocketnow Weekly.
Well, my 2 bits on this whole Motorola topic. Way back when I was reviewing the Droid, I think it was the Droid Bionic, I started seeing in MotoBlur some really cool, really kind of interesting new ways to align icons to the screen with, that kind of plus grid that's there, but it's not. The swipe side to side had the little shadow outlines of where the page was going to be. And then all of a sudden we got honeycomb, and I know that's a 4-letter word, on the Motorola Zoom. And what did we have? We had that same blue plus grid where the icons lay out. We had the same page outline. So Motorola, I think, was working really, really closely with Google with honeycomb and putting that onto the Zoom, and was taking those ideas and maybe even that code and putting it into MotoBlur on their own devices before we had honeycomb. So we kind of had a hint at what honeycomb was going to be, which has evolved into ice cream sandwich and jelly bean now, before the OS was released. So Motorola is doing that. They're looking at Android and they're saying, what can we do to put tomorrow's tech in today's operating systems and do it? But they're still going MotoBlur, which I hate.
Well, and the MotoBlur is thinner than it's ever been before, so
yes.
That is something to celebrate. Before we jump into to iOS, we want to just briefly touch on this piece from Joe with this hilarious leader image. There was a projection made by Eric Schmidt that more than 1 billion Android devices will have been activated by this time next year. Billion.
With a B.
With a B. That's crazy. So Joe has this kind of nice piece where he talks about, well, what does an activation mean? How can we qualify this statement? What is the actual core of this? I mean, but just really briefly, guys, this is a huge milestone. I'm not big on milestones. Like app stores get to 5,000, and then it's like, hey, we got to 5,000. It's like, okay, whatever. But a billion active, a billion Android activations. That is significant.
That's huge.
It's massive. And it's, I think it's being reflected in certain parts of the world and certain parts of the country, certainly my part of the country, where a year ago, I could still ask 4 out of my 5 friends, if they'd heard of an Android phone, and they'd be like, what? It's not necessarily the case. If I asked them if they knew what a Droid was, they knew what that was. But now I ask people Android phone, and then there's this sea of confusion. Yes, it's like, oh, the Droid, what the Galaxy, the Droid, no, what the Nexus, like, okay, whatever. Still got a lot of work to do, Android, but people know that it's the competing OS to the predominantly understood competing OS to the iPhone, and I think that's huge. But it's only going to increase as milestones like this keep getting passed. 1 billion phones on the market. What do you think? This is crazy. I'm so blown away. I'm just rambling. Someone stop me. Someone stop me immediately.
So first of all, a big shout out to how awesome our readers are. Yes. In that, I posed the question: what is an activation? What does it mean? There's some ambiguity to that. Well, Poon, yes, that's his screen name, quoted Andy Rubin and cited his source, which right there, that means Pocketnow readers are just tremendously higher class than anybody else on any other forum or news site I've ever seen. He cited his source. I digress. He says, and I quote, "For those wondering, we count each device only once, i.e. we don't count resold devices, and activations means you go into a store, buy a device, and put it on a network by subscribing to a wireless service." This is a quote from Andy Rubin. And again, the source is cited. Thank you, Poon.
Yeah.
That to me says, if that's really the number that Eric Schmidt is referring to, we have a lot more Androids out there than just that. Because that's one device being activated the first time.
Right.
That's not me flashing 27 different versions of Cyanogen Mod Nightly on my Galaxy Nexus every day. That's huge. But to put that hugeness in perspective, that means this time next year, if the activations continue, we will literally have one Android device for every 7 people in the world.
On the planet. Yeah.
On the planet. And right now, with 480 million activations, that's 1 in 14 of us. Now, cut that in half again, because everybody who has an Android has a tablet, right? So 1 in 28, but that's still a big number. That's huge.
Yeah. No, it's massive. The implications are stunning.
I'll never forget, it was a day in 2007 when this news came about, and I don't remember the exact headline, but it was something like Open Handset Alliance, with partners like Samsung and HTC and Google to release open source platform, blah, blah, blah. And it was such a strange day for me because Pocketnow at that point was only Windows Mobile. We weren't going to go to iPhone. We weren't going to be a smartphone and tablet general mobile site. And I remember discussions with Pocketnow guys, and I don't think either of you were around back then. Definitely not Michael. We were just having these discussions on like, will this ever do anything? Will this ever take off? Can this exist? Does this need to exist? And like reading about 1 billion activations, I mean, it's amazing how this has come full circle, and this is massive. It's so big.
It would be akin to like sitting here today and just kind of bantering about Jala or whatever the new WebOS thing is, or whatever the new like Migo thing is, and like 5 years later, all of a sudden waking up to find that it had taken over the market, right? Yeah.
I guess it worked.
Yeah,
yes, it worked.
It's a crazy thing. Just to cap the Android stuff, we do have some more news coming around the corner. Google has done that thing that companies do when other companies have big announcements. They've come along and just kind of peed all over the existing announcees. Google has announced an Android event for October 29th in New York City. We will be there. Is that right, Brandon? You'll be there. You'll be there. We don't know. Jaime Rivera whipped up a quick piece on what we can expect from this event. You will have to stay tuned and find out. There's going to be probably some Nexus 7 news, probably some Nexus 4 news, blah, 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 blah. Do we think this is the official Nexus event, really quickly? The Nexus 4 event, rather? Yeah, Joe?
Totally.
The Nexus Everything event, yeah. I do. I think we're probably going to have our doubts or our hopes confirmed or smashed about the multi-Nexi approach at this event.
Well, we will see. I want to. We will have to touch on that next week because we do have to move into the other platforms.
If I'm wrong, Michael will eat his hat.
Yeah, that's right. I have. By the way, I think I have about 4 or 5 baseball hats on my dinner table at this point. Let's jump into iOS because there's the other huge news from Apple's platform.
No, it's small news.
Oh, you make a joke and it's funny. And then, speaking of which, the cover of the invite, I believe, says we've got a little more to show you. Keyword little. Obviously, this is coming true. We have this new iPad coming out. We're all kind of devising our takes on the subject if they're not all solidified. This is, what is this? Launch event would take place October 23rd. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Very soon.
So that's coming up in less than a week here. are we expecting to have our socks blown off? Because I'm not. I'm expecting to see a miniature iPad that will contain one or two new features that are not too mind-blowing, but I think the presentation will be very bombastic and it will get a lot of people excited. But for me, I'll just say it, until something new and exciting happens with iOS 6, I just am having difficulty caring from a personal standpoint. Of course, it's going to shake the market up, but go ahead.
Let's try to figure out something. It's a puzzle that I cannot figure out. So the iPad 3, the new iPad, has a resolution of 2048 by 1536. Mm-hmm. The iPad 2 and the iPad 1 had a resolution of half that, 1024 by 768. I think that the iPad Mini cannot have either resolution. It can't have the bigger resolution because you
can't do that. Yeah,
it's just insane. You're not. That would be like someone making a 5-inch 1080p display on a phone. And by the same token, it cannot have the 1024 by 768 resolution because there are 7-inch tablets, and the iPad Mini will be a 7.8-inch tablet that have higher resolution than that, 1280 by 800, and the new Nook tablet thingy has 1440 by 900. So they can't go with either resolution, and yet if they introduce another new resolution, like they did with the iPhone 5, they're going to really start pissing people off, or maybe they don't care about that. So what's the resolution of the screen on the iPad Mini going to be, guys? What do you think?
Joe?
It's going to be good. It's going to be optimized for a perfect tablet experience.
Yeah.
You see how I'm doing that, Brandon? Apple doesn't have to release how big it is or what the dimensions are. They just need to say, this is all of the power of the new iPad, all of the beauty of the screen in a smaller tablet form factor that fits easily in a purse, in a briefcase, in a backpack, or in a cargo pants pocket.
And they will be correct. They will be saying exactly what normal people are, want to hear. Normal people hear. It wasn't until maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, where I was listening to reading articles, listening to podcasts. People started throwing around actual resolution like figures. When I'm just used to like talking about display technology like TFT. I thought that made me a nerd, and then all of a sudden I'm hearing like 1024 by 768. I'm like, oh god, I'm tuning out. And it took me a long time to actually get to a point where I actually cared about those numbers, and really I just care about them because I'm a geek. Like you throw around those numbers to anything approaching an average person, and they're like, whatever. What does it do for me? So Apple, we know, has the market cornered on marketing things right. I think the iPad Mini is going to be a smash hit. I think if you think it's not, I would love to hear your argument. But it's regardless of the display resolution, it's going to be huge.
You guys didn't answer my question. We both dodged it.
Yeah. Well,
we're putting our resumes together. We're going to apply at Apple.
I don't care, and I don't think anyone else does.
Well, you have to care because in the case of when the new iPad launched, most apps weren't up to date with the higher res screen, so they were grainy and crappy. In the case of the iPhone 5, there are so many apps that do not span to the full screen. So this is an issue that iPad Mini customers are going to care about. And it sounds like
it's not though, because look at the iPhone 5 selling. You know what I mean? Is the iPhone 5 suffering in sales because some apps have black bars on the screen?
No, but it's frustrating. Bad Piggies. I want Bad Piggies to span all 1136 by 640 pixels. I really do.
And missed opportunity there.
Bing Maps as well, or all the apps that have not been optimized that need to be really quickly. I agree, but
reading between the lines, it sounds like you guys think that they will probably come up with a new screen resolution. They don't care that developers will have to change their apps. That's just what I'm going to take away from this.
I'm hoping that they're going to do something very similar to the iPhone 5, if not the same resolution, that it's going to be the same proportions, and then they will just scale. If you want even higher resolution, you can do that, but things will just work.
Yeah.
I'm probably wrong, but I can't see Apple making that gaffe again. Because we just came out with the iPhone 5. It just had this new thing that developers have to adjust for. They've got to have done something to address that. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I don't think it's going to be an issue.
All we've got to go on is this picture of this powered off display next to the battery of the device. So, I don't know. I'll look forward to seeing. I know that this is a significant thing, particularly for developers, but I don't know how much it's going to take for iOS developers to become disenfranchised with the platform, but I will tell you it's going to be more than these kind of variable screen resolutions. Because yeah, they can go to Android where that has been true for years and years, but then they can also make about 80% less money on Android. I don't know what the actual figure is, but so I don't think this is
1 billion activations.
1 billion. Well, in a week from now, we'll be talking about more specifics.
We will.
I guess.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong, Michael will eat another hat.
I will eat another hat. I'll just add it to the pile. Let's talk while we're on tablets and while we have just over 10 minutes left. The Microsoft Surface price has leaked. The Microsoft originated tablet. This is legit, right? I'm not behind on this. I'm not seeing an update where this has been debunked or anything like that. This was via TechCrunch.
Well, it's up for pre-order, so.
Now it's up for pre-order. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I got the stories mixed up in the rundown. Yes, it is up for pre-order. And by the way, that pre-order window opened. What was it? A day ago? 2 days ago?
I think 2 days ago.
Okay.
Tuesday.
My page isn't loading for some reason.
So based on that alone, it sounds like none of us have pre-ordered a Surface.
I pre-ordered a Surface.
I was going to say,
Did you?
Yeah, don't jump the gun there. See, I would have, if Brandon hadn't, I would have given serious thought to it. And then I would have looked at my $8 in my bank account and been like, well, maybe next time.
I was all over Surface until I loaded Windows 8 on my work computer, the one that I do all of my Pocketnow articles and videos on. And, oh my, incensed. No.
Explain, please.
No,
What is that feeling?
What's up?
What's going on?
There is no more start menu. And I know that doesn't really apply to Windows RT as much as it does to, Windows 8 tablet. What are we calling that now?
Windows 8 Pro.
There is no start menu. It is that
you access
big
stuff?
metro. You go down to where the start menu was, and you get this little block that says Start that shows you a picture of your start screen, and it takes over the whole screen. And the stuff that you want isn't there. And as soon as you get it all loaded up, there's too much stuff there, and then you have to go through and clean it. It is the ultimate cluttered desktop where I can't find anything, and I can't go back to it. And I know
rearrange
RT
stuff.
is
you can
different.
Put stuff where you want, right?
Yes, you can. And after about 2 weeks, I finally got that done. But it's trying to convince it to do what you want. Now, RT is different. RT is tablet. RT doesn't have the traditional desktop experience.
It does.
Well, no, it does. It does.
It does and it doesn't. Everyone you ask knows something different. There's so much misinformation about Windows 8. It's amazing.
There really is. And Brandon, when we were in New York City, I was confused at the one of the ASUS lady, I think, because I was like, so wait, this runs RT, but wait, it has desktop mode. So wait a second.
She didn't even know.
She had no idea what we were talking about. So I've run RT tablets in desktop mode, but what they can't run certain apps, like they don't have Windows Media Player, they don't have the whole Office suite. That's
Photoshop.
the deal, right? Yeah.
You have to have a special app for it, a special version of the app, and it's supposed to be written in JavaScript and HTML5 and so much more web-based and yada yada yada. And you know what? That's fine, but doing this whole hybrid thing between here's this brand new operating system that you have to have special apps for that you download from Microsoft's walled garden, and here is your other computer that's running the same operating system, but it's not RT, and you have that pseudo desktop experience, and you can run all of those other apps, including the ones from the walled garden. There's a huge disconnect there, and you have people now, not to point any fingers right back at Microsoft, that are making an RT or a touch type interface, a Metro or an MX or whatever we're calling that now, that interface on a desktop application that's not going to run on the RT platform because it's an x86, x64, whatever it is, version. It looks like it should run, but it won't.
There's also like the hardware difference consideration, right? Because and it is, yeah. But and that translates also to the casing. That translates to the thing, not just the chipsets that people won't see until they get home or will never see and never care about, but the actual casing like design. Like on the Windows Pro tablets, by and large, the one we've held on to, the Windows 8 Pro, the non-RT devices are thicker. They have fan ports. They're much more like the, kind of old Windows
Slate
Slate PC experience, right?
They gotta be.
Yeah, right. So, but I think that's going to set expectations right at the retail counter. So I think it's going to force salespeople, if you're buying these in a retail environment, to say like, all right, we need to quickly classify this for customers because that's what happens in retail. The RT tablets, these are for your consumer stuff. If you want to be a pro or you want to be a baller or whatever, then you get the Pro device, which is heavier and thicker, but you can do more. So I don't see this as being a giant problem as long as expectations are set properly. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
The problem is confusion. And it comes down to Apple, when faced with this same dilemma years ago, instead of saying, let's make Mac OS X, OS X, I'm not in the lingo.
What?
Instead of saying, let's make that run
right.
on a... Did I? Oh, crap.
Yeah, you had it right, and then you got wrong. I'm sorry.
That's what I do. I'm an Android guy. Instead of them saying, let's port this operating system that runs on our desktops, that runs on our servers, that runs on our laptops, let's port that and kind of miniaturize it and make it run on a tablet. Instead, they kicked it to the curb and they made a new OS with new apps and a new environment and a new everything around that platform.
And Microsoft did the exact opposite. They did the ugly thing. And it's funny because they could have gone really one of two ways. I guess they could have gone 3 ways. All 3 ways end in a cliff that just there's just bloodshed after that. Way number 1 is what they did. What they did with Windows 8 is they kind of made it into a tablet operating system, and there's articles all over the place about how people in business are just not going to upgrade to Windows 8 because, Joe, like you said in your scenario, you go to the start menu and you get these colorful tiles, and you're like, where the heck is my Excel? So they messed it up there, and then or they could have gone with. They could have gone with a glorified Windows 7 operating system where it's just the desktop paradigm, business work. And then people would have said, this is in the past. No one wants this. People want touch interfaces. So that doesn't work. Or they could have gone this third, even more confusing route, which is they could have created almost like a Windows Phone 8 tablet operating system in addition to an enhanced Windows 7 desktop operating system, but that would be way too confusing. So any of these roads Microsoft could have gone down with Windows 8 ends in the cliff of death, I think.
Well, I don't know. I think that they are probably, I understand why they went with a almost entirely new, fresh start from a UI perspective and from an architecture perspective with Windows 7, right? I'm right in both of those things. The underlying architecture was very different than it was on Windows Mobile, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I get why they had to do that on mobile, and I get why they're now trying to have it both ways because they kind of have to. I don't know.
Well, the writing is on the wall right now. Just the fact that we have Windows RT and then we have Windows everything else, whether that's Windows 8 on a desktop or laptop like I'm doing now, or Windows 8 Pro, whatever, on a Slate type device. We now know things are going towards this whole Metro, this whole MX, this whole pretty colorful tiles and separate apps. New apps, rewritten apps that are distributed through the walled garden. And I'm going to start calling it that on every platform now.
Sure. That's what it is.
The walled garden. So the days of all of your normal stuff, your desktop experience that you're familiar with, your Photoshop that you're familiar with, the video editing stuff that we use on a daily basis at Pocketnow, it's limited. It's going to be gone. And it's probably not going to be 1, maybe 2 iterations down the road when we're not going to have that, and it's all going to be Metro and whatever Metro evolves into. But we can see that with RT. Instead of cutting it off saying this is completely separate, they did this hybrid thing, realized they couldn't do this hybrid thing, so they have the mobile tablet, the thin one that can't do all of this other desktop stuff that we're familiar with and that we're used to from years and years and decades of Windows.
Sure, and it doesn't need to.
It's gone. it's gone.
It doesn't need to do that. You know, I mean, it's funny. I will say it again. I say it almost every podcast. It's so awesome that we have such a diverse team because we have such different perspectives. Because, you know, you're talking, Joe, about using, you know, PCs in your daily life and stuff like that. And my PC died, you know, a year ago. And I had been a PC guy for 10 years. And I've been kind of an Apple-only desktop user since then. And, you know, I see this thing. I see the Surface. And I think, oh, wow. A peripheral that runs, you know, a portable device that runs an OS that I find, you know, fresh from a UI perspective and that can probably do all the things I need it to do. And I wonder how many people are looking at it from each perspective. You know, for some reason, I want to say that Microsoft is not targeting their existing user base with Surface and with similar new, particularly Windows RT products. You know,
no, but it's the Windows 8 metaphor. We're seeing where they're going with Surface. They've tipped their hand. We can see their cards. This is where they're going. And looking at it from that perspective, I can take virtually any software that I've gotten. If I can find a floppy drive anywhere and plug it in, I can load up any software that I've had years and years and years ago and make it run on Windows 7 and on my current version of Windows 8. But the map is now pointed to that going away. If you want to run software in the future with Microsoft, you're going to have to buy it through that walled garden, or you're going to have to root it, unlock it, and circumvent the process, which we all know will happen. But you don't have to do that now with Microsoft, and that is its strength. It will run anything that you throw at it.
It's its strength if
and
people
that's
know
going
about
away.
it. It's its strength if people know about it. And I don't think enough people know or care about it because people have already – Apple already did this. You know, like you said before, Joe, I think, you know, like Apple came along and was like, here's this new walled garden, and this is the way it's going to be. And people, you know, far from people being cautious and saying, well, no, I just don't know about that, people ate it up.
Yes,
like it
because
was
they
delicious
went
oatmeal.
They went all in with that.
Yeah.
And you still have your Mac. You still have OS 10. They didn't get rid of that.
I see. Okay, so your problem is I see what you mean. Yeah.
They're unifying everything, and Windows as we know it is dead. It doesn't know it yet.
I want to on another. I feel like when Surface actually launches, we need to revisit this conversation because this is really, really interesting. I want to have a discussion between all of us platform guys and just kind of talk about this because I love the idea that maybe the future is changing and it's not changing in the bright, beautiful way that Microsoft wants us to think it is. Yeah. Would you buy one, Joe? At these prices?
No, I would buy a Mac.
You'd buy a Mac at these prices.
Yep.
Wow.
Now, see, the prices for listeners, it's $499 for a 32 gig, $599 for a. Why are the capacities different here? 64 gig is running at $699. What's the difference between the 232 gigs on the pre-order screen that we've got here? Is one RT and one Pro? No, they haven't even published the Pro prices.
The middle one's out of stock.
The out-of-stock one is $100 more.
I can't see a differentiation on it.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, whatever. The prices are ranging from $499 to $699. So, you know, they're basically paralleling the iPad cost. Do you think that's a mistake, or do you think that is exactly where these devices need to be? Because I remember a tablet launching called the HP Touchpad that tried to launch at the iPad's price point, and it was a vastly inferior device, so it couldn't command those prices, and then discounts, you know, kind of happened very quickly. Do you think that's going to happen here?
Their top feature for this thing, if you look on the Surface pre-order page, I'm bringing it up. Mm-hmm. The number one feature is the Vapor Magnesium casing, and so the quality, the form factor, the craftsmanship. Mm-hmm. To take a page out of Apple's book, is the main feature. And so they can charge as much as the iPad on that alone. They could have made it cheaper and then the perceived value would be lower, like kind of Nexus 7 style, or they could have priced it higher and then people are like, why don't I just get a laptop? This is a tablet like an iPad. iPads are less expensive. So they had to put the price right where the iPad is.
Yep, agreed.
And it seems that the black touch cover with or without is making that $100 difference on the 32 gig version.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I want that on my Nexus 7. I want
the
Microsoft
touch
to
cover?
come out with a Bluetooth cover that's your keyboard, and it looks as slick and as smooth as that, and it'll work on any device. I think Microsoft could sell that to Apple people. Just don't put the Windows logo too big on it.
See, I don't think they could, because you're talking about unless they made one specifically for the Nexus 7, you're talking about a really big design disconnect there from a view, a visual standpoint. I think what you were saying before, Brandon, like that they're selling this thing on its craftsmanship and on its high build quality, and I completely agree. Also, they're doing they kind of lifted this color thing from Nokia, right? Where they're like, look at these giant, eye-catching, bright colors. I was at the Downtown Crossing T-Stop in Boston here the other day, and the entire thing was just papered in Surface ads. I hadn't seen a push that big since the Samsung Galaxy S3 launch. The entire subway station is just covered in Surface ads, and they're all so brightly colored you cannot help but look at them. This is a very, very,
I can't help but look.
I couldn't. I mean, I couldn't turn away. I kept taking photos. But
by the way, I played with Microsoft Surface back at the Mix conference years and years ago. It was a table.
Oh, the table. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had hands-on with that before I
was
worked
so
at
close to buying one. I saved up $9,999. I was ready to buy and put it in my living room, but then they stopped. They changed the name or something.
Changed the name.
And then they resurrected the name for something different.
And now it's a skateboard.
Now it's a skateboard.
I thought that was a really cool PR stunt. Microsoft, real quick, just put some wheels on the bottom of a Surface and skated around on it. Who was that from Microsoft? Do we know? It's one of their guys.
Are they going to sell that in the store as an accessory?
What, the skateboard bolt-on? Yeah.
Did they bolt it, or was it just suctioned on?
I don't know how they did it. I didn't look at the mechanics of it. Microsoft demonstrates Surface durability with Surface Skateboard, and it's not like it's anything special. It's just Gorilla Glass 2, but apparently it withstood some abuse.
Talk about multitasking.
Steven Sinatra,
Yeah.
president of the Windows Phone, Windows and Windows Live division. That's what he did. Wow, that's
You think you could
crazy.
skate with your shoes off so you could operate the device with your toes?
With your toes?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
You guys ever and this will be the last irrelevant question I ask you. You guys ever use your device with your nose? Like if you're like carrying groceries and you've got like a text that you want to reply to, but you don't have a hand free. You can touch your capacitive touchscreen with your nose?
I can honestly say that has never crossed my mind.
Brandon.
I'm glad you bring it up because I've got an extra long, meaty nose, and it would make a perfect touch input device. All day.
You know what? Well, you're welcome for the suggestion. Now you can stop going to buy those mini sausages to use as capacitive styli.
You thought fingerprints were bad on your screen, and now we got nose
prints.
Oh,
Nose
my
goo.
goodness.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I think that's an outstanding place to end the podcast. What do you guys think? We are over time on our hard stop time, and we do have to wrap it up here. So, Brandon, anything before we head out?
I am holding my iPhone to my nose, and it's amazing how precise my nose is when moving around on the screen.
Because your eyeballs are right there. You can see.
I'm gonna try to type. No, that doesn't work.
Give it some practice, man. It'll work for you.
All right, I'll report back.
Okay. Joe, any closing remarks? It was great to have you back on the show, as always. I wish this could happen more often, and maybe when we all live in the same city as well.
I just want our users to know how much behind the scenes goes into this stuff, just in coordinating schedules. We worked on this for hours to try and get all together.
Yeah.
Because we all love it. We love doing that. Second thing I want to mention is please, in the comments down below, tell us how many of you picked up your phone or tablet and navigated with your nose. I want to know that.
That is a requirement. And don't leave a comment on YouTube.
No, don't go to YouTube. Go to Pocketnow.com where things are civil and people cite their sources.
Well, I don't know about civil, Joe, now.
Well, comparatively.
You ever written a piece on Windows Phone? Anyway.
And then just my last traditional outro, looking at all of the news from right now, whether it's Android, whether it's iOS, or whether it's Windows Phone or Windows RT, every week I'm just amazed. It's a beautiful time to be alive.
It is indeed.
It is.
It is. Guys, that's
heartwarming.
With that heartwarming sentiment. No, I do love it. And Joe Levi is absolutely correct. That's going to wrap it up for us for this episode of the Pocketnow Weekly podcast. throw a tweet our way. Joe Levi is about to blow up Twitter. As he always does every week with a live tweet. I love that this tradition has sprouted. Joe, you are the man. Follow him. He is at Joe Levi. Follow Brandon Miniman. He is at Brandon Miniman. Follow me. I'm at Captain 2 Phones. Captain the number 2 Phones. Follow Pocketnow's official Twitter account at PocketNowTweets, which is currently tweeting about that contest I talked about at the top of the show. Do not forget about that. It's awesome. Follow us on Facebook and Google+. Leave us a review on iTunes or Zune if you like the podcast. If you have a topic, question, suggestion, or you just want to say hi, please email us, podcast@pocketnow.com. Once again, very sorry we didn't get to listener mail this time. We were too short on time. We will get to it next week. That is a promise, or I will eat another hat. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you.